So, Wolfenstein Youngblood. This is a game that came out recently, back in July 26th, 2019, so that's 4 or 5 days prior to the publishing of this video. And, well, suffice to say that the feedback surrounding that game has been mixed to pretty bad. Some people just say it's okay, others just flat out really hate it and say that it's easily the worst entry in the series. Just one look at the Metacritic page will reveal a Metascore of 74, so the journalists seem to think it's fine, but a lot of users are pretty peeved about many aspects of the game. So first things first, combat and shooting, a lot of people say has somehow gotten worse. And then on top of that, we have protagonists who are just insufferable in the way they've been represented. They're just kind of very cringe. They make infantile banter all the time that's poorly written and just really dumb. They make jokes that seem like they were written by 12-year-olds, and they try to be super over the top funny, but it's just not funny at all. It's kind of annoying, actually, for a lot of people. And then there's the story, which a lot of people seem to think just takes a step back compared to other Wolfenstein games. A lot of people seem to think it's the worst in the series, doesn't really add all that much, doesn't tell anything substantial. Level design has been relayed to be uninspired and repetitive. There are many times when you get to revisit certain areas a lot, and there's nothing about level design that's compelling, that keeps you super engaged. And then there's just general design quirks that are in the game. For example, one popular one out there is that there's just no way to pause the game for some reason, which is a standard feature in any single-player game. So that's very strange, and it's become something of a meme. There's also the RPG mechanics that have been tacked on here that make the game worse. It's a step back for the series. They kind of add this element where it doesn't feel like it really belongs. It makes enemies really bullet spongy if they're a higher level, which doesn't make for that power fantasy gameplay. None of it is great. And then the AI is awful to boot, apparently. Like, if when you are playing in single player and you've got your AI companion with you, apparently that companion is just really shit in terms of how it behaves. You're constantly having to babysit the AI, essentially, and in terms of enemy AI, that's pretty bad too. They're just not particularly smart. They don't behave in a way that is very engaging. Graphics they're alright. They're not like bad, but they're not super inspired either. They're not like a huge improvement over past entries. This is all topped off by numerous annoying bugs throughout the game, whether it be visual or audio. There's just a lot of quirky stuff there that doesn't speak to a polished product. And last but not least, there's the microtransactions, which have been shoehorned in what is pretty much a single-player experience. There is a co-op element, but it's a single-player campaign-style format. It's very linear. You just kind of go through it once and experience it, and there's a beginning, middle, and end. It's not like a MMO environment, anything like that. It's just a single-player game. And the way this works is that there are gold bars acting as a premium currency, and you can purchase these in the store, and then you can use these gold bars to unlock cosmetic items like different armor, suit skins, and helmet skins, and weapon skins. Now, not everything in the game can be purchased with gold bars, but there are certain cosmetic items that you can purchase with in-game currency or premium currency, and there are certain items that you can only purchase with gold currency, so that's completely locked away from the player unless they pay up. And sure, it is cosmetics only, but I'll keep repeating this. Cosmetics are an important aspect of a gameplay experience. When you give your character a badass look, that creates a certain sense of fulfillment and an emotional attachment to your player character. So if there is a skin that you really like, but you have to pay for it, it's locked behind some paywall, even though the content is readily available at launch. I mean, that's just in poor taste, right? So that's where we're at with this game, and in this video, I want to focus on the microtransactions. For Bethesda in particular, this is insulting that they would even add microtransactions to this single-player experience to Wolfenstein Youngblood. This goes especially true because Bethesda is in a really precarious situation right now where their reputation has gone down the drain, and it would do them a lot of good to start engaging in such a way that they're going to win back some goodwill, because their reputation is at an all-time low. Obviously, with Fallout 76, that was a major botched launch in terms of how that game was sold at a full price, but shipped broken, incomplete, unpolished, poorly designed, poorly conceptualized. Then there's Elder Scrolls Blades, which was promised to be a mobile version of a pure Elder Scrolls experience, only to feature egregious microtransactions, loot boxes, and these timers for loot you collect in-game for the treasure chests that kind of made you go crazy, that make the game insufferable in such a way that you have to spend money on the game in order to really have some semblance of fun. Rage 2 wasn't all that great. There's the fact that cheats were kind of locked away behind certain business elements. And then the classic Doom ports more recently, that launch was marred by the login verification requirements that Bethesda claims was accidentally implemented. And now, yeah, Wolfenstein, we're getting not only the worst entry in the series, but the insulting thing about all of this is the priority on monetization. And given all the feedback surrounding Wolfenstein Youngblood, just in terms of the game design and certain aspects that need adjustment, you would think that Bethesda would prioritize fixing the game first and foremost. It doesn't seem like this is the kind of game that can magically be fixed with a patch. A lot of the issues are so fundamental that it's going to be a mediocre game no matter what. But certain things like, fixing the game so that you can pause it, little things like that, little hot fixes like that would, make some headway. But nope. Bethesda, it turns out, are more focused, unsurprisingly, on preserving the integrity of the microtransactions they've implemented rather than preserving the integrity of the game. It wasn't long after the game's launch that people found some kind of workaround around these microtransactions. As I mentioned before, there's in-game currency and premium currency. The in-game currency is called coins, and there are a lot of items that you can purchase with either the in-game coins or the premium currency gold bars. So one user discovered that you can use this software called Cheat Engine to give yourself however many coins that you want. There's this Reddit user going by the name Calibrono. He talked all about it. Using this exploit, he managed to get himself all the coins he needed to buy the game skins that are available via coins, and so that all worked out fine. But then once word began to spread about all this, Bethesda was incredibly quick to act on this and patch that out. After Bethesda released this impromptu hotfix, which, by the way, they did in a very low-key fashion, the same Twitter user posted this on Reddit. The very first Wolfenstein Youngblood patch makes sure you can't get coins with Cheat Engine. So yeah, this just happened. Bethesda has priorities, and priority number 1 is not to allow you to cheat in your single-player game for free if the same can be done with real money. And yes, I just tried it myself, doesn't work anymore. Link to this Reddit post is a screenshot showing some game code featuring that patch that disables the ability for players to cheat their way to getting free coins. And the post also linked to this other Reddit user's post, which reads, "The first 160 megabytes patch since launch day came out today. What does it fix? Cheat engine exploit." So yeah, there's this understandable frustration surrounding all this. Here's a game that did so much wrong, that botched so many elements, and Bethesda decides that the number 1 priority right now is to patch the microtransactions to ensure that people aren't having too much fun without paying up. And keep in mind that this is a single-player game where if you cheat, it's not going to affect anyone else. These types of games, after all, are self-contained. Nothing you do in your instance of Wolfenstein will in any way, shape, or form negatively impact somebody else's instance. So it just doesn't make sense to prevent cheats. If this were online, of course, that'd be a whole different story, because you want to ensure that everyone is on the same playing field, that there is balance that is achieved with online games. So that would be understandable, but as a single-player game, if you own that game, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. Have fun with it however you want. Whether you want to mod it a certain way, whether you want to cheat with it a certain way, whether you want to give yourself infinite ammo, infinite money, whatever it is, that should be the player's prerogative. And it is disheartening to see that Bethesda doesn't seem to think that way. This is especially disappointing for a company that emphasizes, player mods on games like Elder Scrolls and Fallout. I mean, that's kind of a lifeblood for a lot of these games, but now they're trying to exert more control over how players experience their single-player titles. And this is a trend that's happening across the board in the entire industry. We have seen this also happen in a similar fashion with Ubisoft when they restricted players from gaining access to this method of gaining fast experience points in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So that game recently released this quest creator where players can upload their own quests for others to download and play. Now, some people made quests that are like super short and super simple that complete themselves essentially. So the quest might involve you have to assassinate this guy, and then they'll have an NPC kill that target before the player does, and so that whole mission just is automated, takes a few seconds, and the players get the rewards from that, they get the XP, and so it's designed in such a way that you can just keep repeating that over and over again and get quick XP. But it wasn't long before Ubisoft, once they heard about this, that they began to threaten sanctions to players who uploaded these types of quests and engaged in these types of quests. And it wasn't because they thought that this ruined the game in any way, because again, it's a single-player game, it's not going to ruin anything. What they were afraid of is that it would render the item that they were selling in their game store, the XP booster, useless, because, well, that's exactly what it does. So to preserve the integrity of their microtransaction store, they added restrictions to the story creation, the quest creator, that it was fair game. It's natural for people to create these kinds of missions. They're not the most creatively stimulating, but you give players the ability to design levels and upload those, they're going to do something like this. Same thing happens with, Skyrim mods and Fallout mods, and any game where you give players some semblance of control, there will be some stuff like this. And it should not matter in a single-player game where you're not affecting anybody else. But publishers, in their intent to monetize and nickel and dime players, they're just removing the fun out of these games and the fun that comes with players having some control over their products, all to push monetization. And that's why a lot of these single-player games that don't need online features will come with online features, with verification requirements and what have you, because they want to ensure that players are playing the game in a way that publishers can exploit to then monetize. And it's especially disheartening to see Bethesda, a company that once prioritized user agency, mods, and what have you, go down this route, especially during a time when they, as a company, are completely down in the dumps in terms of the goodwill and the trust that consumers and hardcore gamers have towards them, and reasonably so. They pulled a lot of bullshit over the past year, and the bullshit continues. It is just sad to see how corporate Bethesda has become. They're up there with EA at this point. It is all about monetization first and fun second. They'd rather patch out fun cheats than to prioritize fixing a game that has a lot of issues. It all kind of reminds me of Anthem, for example, because with that game, you may recall that BioWare accidentally introduced this bug that turned up the loot hose and gave players a ton of rare loot, which was exactly what the game needed to be fun. But BioWare couldn't have that, so they very quickly patched that out. And all the meanwhile, a lot of the more pressing issues and flaws with the game continue to remain unfixed. And with Wolfenstein, same thing, There are so many issues that need priority right now, and yet Bethesda's deciding to hold those off because the monetization comes first above all else. It's so enlightening and so very telling about the current culture of the AAA landscape. And this is another element to why I don't believe in the excuse that cosmetics-only microtransactions are fine. Aside from the fact that cosmetics do affect one's gameplay experience, their enjoyment of a game, there's also the element of developers' priority shifting with any type of microtransactions implementation. Any implementation of microtransactions makes them want to ensure that the microtransactions, the marketplace, the store is being bolstered, and that kind of delays a lot of the game updates. Same thing happened with Destiny 2 in the early days. They were so focused on bolstering the Eververse store that, the game itself kind of took a back seat. Fixing the game was not as big of a priority, and so a lot of these updates came later. And at this point, I have very little doubt that Bethesda will take a similar route with Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. These two games that I'm very much looking forward to, but I'm very much afraid that they'll be monetized to hell and back. I mean, they've already gotten pretty egregious with the Fallout 76 Atomic Shaft. They've gotten a taste of how profitable that can be. And in that game, I mean, items are sold at a super expensive price point. More recently, they've kept adding additional gameplay affecting microtransactions, continuing to push the envelope, adding the ability for players to pay for conveniences, despite the fact that they once promised that the microtransactions in this game would be cosmetic only. So no doubt that stuff's gonna keep coming back in future games. I have little doubt that the Creation Club is something that they're going to keep trying to plug in. You know, they tried with Fallout 4 and Skyrim, not as successfully, but no doubt they'll keep fine-tuning that and find a way to shoehorn that into Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 somehow, and that's going to be incredibly disheartening. I'm even worried about Doom Eternal at this point. I feel like we'll find something in that game at launch that we're not going to like, something that they haven't disclosed that will take us aback for all the wrong reasons, and I'm obviously praying that's not true. I do hope that the game turns out to be everything we want it to be, but if I were you, my recommendation is be skeptical about everything Bethesda related from here on out until they start getting their shit together, or until they start proving that they can start consistently prioritizing fun over monetization, until they can consistently start balancing, consumer-friendly practices and business. Because right now they're definitely leaning all the way towards the business side. They're more corporate than ever before, and I have very little faith in this company at this point. How far the mighty have fallen. So heartbreaking to see this happen to a company who was so beloved to me as I was growing up. So yeah, there you have it, folks. This is my take on what's going on right now with Wolfenstein Youngblood. Another botched release, another egregiously published title. I'd love to hear what your take is on all of this in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.